Hi, welcome to day 3 of Control Your Cravings course. I'm Carolyn Banner of Body by Banner, and I'm really excited to jump into the topic for today, which is going to be on exercise. So we're going to go over specific ways that you can use exercise to exercise smarter to help curb your cravings instead of spur your cravings, instead of making them worse. It's because I see so often and have experienced myself those times when I started to really ramp up my exercise, or when I've had clients who I've been personal training or starting, when I used to do boot camps, they would be starting to do boot camp a lot, and they would just be ravenously hungry and craving everything in sight and overeating their calories. And if weight loss was a goal, then game over. They weren't able to actually achieve their goal of getting that caloric deficit. So we're going to talk today about how to exercise smarter and really prevent that overeating that can happen when we really start to exercise a lot more. I just want to quickly go over a few housekeeping items, and then we're going to jump into the content for today. First of all, I'm going to just kind of review what we went through on days 1 and 2, and then just invite you, if you're watching in live or you watch this later on Facebook, to put in the comments. I'd love to see where you're listening, watching in from. So just type that in and give me a little hi, and then ask me any questions. Put those in the comments as well. I'll be happy to answer them, but most likely more at the end, just so we can keep the flow of this talk going and give you the information that I want to cover without a lot of interruption. So please, though, I invite your questions and would love to hear them. Also, I want to just remind you, if you haven't already and you want to have the follow-up content each day sent to you via email, please make sure to add your name and email for free for the Control Your Cravings course. The link is on the Facebook page, as well as going to be in the comments as soon as I finish. So I'll make sure to add that. I forgot to add that in the title before I started. So I'll add that when I finish. And every day I've been sending out the replay of the talk, so recording of that, as well as just important highlights from the talk, so takeaway points on a cheat sheet. Today I'm going to actually be sending out video, a free workout video and a free yoga class, to just kind of drive home what we're going to be covering about exercising smarter and give you some actual tools to implement so that you can really start to take these into action, right? So the whole point of this course is to go from awareness and knowing that there's some ways that we can maybe improve and control our cravings, and take that knowledge and put it into action. Because it's really easy to get stuck in just acquiring more and more knowledge and trying to find the next best thing, and really nothing really changes until we start taking action. So that's my goal for you, is to start taking some small actions to get some wins and to start to feel some freedom, to start to feel some relief from those uncontrollable cravings that you might be having, and feeling more freedom around food. So that's really the goal of this course for you guys. On day 1, we really went over, if you haven't gotten a chance, you can go back and rewatch those on the Facebook page, or I'm posting them on my YouTube channel, The Body by Banner. So be sure to subscribe there if you want the updates on those. And the day 1, we really went over just what are cravings, what's the difference between cravings and hunger, and how you can know if you're having a craving versus really feeling hungry. Because, right, we don't want to necessarily push through hunger and ignore that. We want to feed ourselves when we're actually hungry. So some tools to differentiate between those things, as well as my story. I really share a lot of personal stories of how I struggled with emotional eating that really drove these uncontrollable cravings that felt like they were controlling my life rather than me being in control of how I was around food. And I really kind of shared some hard things for me that were a little bit difficult to share, but I felt like it was important to share that journey with you, because it's been a real struggle for me, and I when I see other women still struggling with it, I can really relate, because I was there with you, and it's hard. And I want you to know that it still sometimes pops up for me, and that there's not going to be this magic button that we push or we find that's going to just magically make those cravings just disappear. So what we're doing this week is giving you tools. So I want to give you the tools to help find a way to really feel freedom around food. So the way I feel now is that I can go into any situation and know how to eat, and not feel like I'm going to be raiding the cupboard later, standing out, eating out of the carton of ice cream. And I might be tempted to do those things still. Like, don't get me wrong, those still pop up for me where I have those cravings, but now I have tools that I know how to handle that and to control those a bit better. So that was day 1. Day 2, we really went into then specific nutrition tools. So what are those very specific triggers that can spur those food cravings? So we went over why we might get those cravings and to know what triggers to look for. And we went over very basic nutrition tools. I go in much more depth on those. I kind of just really hit the main points to not overwhelm you guys. So I really didn't want to overwhelm, but wanted to give you some just starting points with nutrition that can help curb cravings. And I go in much more in depth when I work one-on-one with clients and also in the Magic Makers movement. So there's more that gets flushed out in those tools, but I wanted to give you guys a starting point so that you could begin implementing right away and not feel overwhelmed. And yesterday I went over and had the homework. The homework for you last night was to find your SNEs, which are the Streamlined Nutrition Essentials, which are about 3 things, no more than that really are your go-tos, that your non-negotiables about how you eat each day. And that creates the foundation of your diet so that you have that spare willpower and energy to handle those situations that pop up that are a bit more out of your control, right? Like, if we can nail down about 80% of our diet and have that pretty automated and streamlined with these Streamlined Nutrition Essentials, which I'll share mine in a second, then we have that last 20% that's kind of up in the air, might be harder to know how to navigate it, like eating out, going to parties, traveling. Maybe you have a sick day and you don't have time to cook, all these things, or your kids get sick and your mom, and you just have like the schedule get thrown off and you may be ordering takeout. How do you handle that? And in those situations where the stress comes up and your cravings are going to be heightened and triggered, that allows you, if you have that about 80% kind of streamlined, then that allows you that energy that you're not worrying about the 80%, you're not putting a lot of energy into that, then you have your energy saved up for those situations where you really have to navigate some trickier craving triggers. And that's why we want to have those SNEs in place. My 3 SNEs are to make sure I fill up. I aim to get vegetables at every meal, including breakfast, which can be tough, but I aim to really create the foundation of my diet by having at least 50% of my plate or bowl for lunch and dinner be filled up with low carb, kind of watery vegetables, so not starchy vegetables. And then I also include other vegetables too, like the starchy vegetables, but that's not one of my SNEs. So number 1 is 50% low carb starchy vegetables, or watery, not starchy vegetables for lunch and dinner. And to get protein at all my meals. So at least 20 grams at breakfast and about 30 grams at lunch and dinner, and about 10 grams if I have a snack, to have protein with that. My last one, which is more of my stretch one, where it pushes me a bit more, it's a little harder to achieve, is when I choose to have treats, because I'm someone who actually really enjoys sweets and I want to still include them in my life. I don't have any big fat loss goals or weight goals. So for me, the third one is to mindfully, when I have a treat, to mindfully enjoy it by portioning out a moderate amount and then sitting down to have that and enjoy it, rather than standing up and eating ice cream out of a carton, or to stand at the cupboard and just keep eating out of the chip bag and those things. So that's my third one. So just a quick review on those first 2 days. Today, I can't believe we're halfway through already, is that we're gonna go over exercise. So we're gonna dive into that in just a second. If you're jumping on, just give me a shout out to where you're watching from. I saw some new folks were jumping in. So just type in the comments if you have questions. And of course, it's fun to just see where everyone's listening in from, since we've got such an international group. And I will get to questions if you have them at the end, just so we can keep flowing as we get started. All right, so all the housekeeping stuff out of the way. I'm gonna share one more thing at the end, but for now, let's just jump right into day 3 of the Control Your Cravings course. I'm covering exercise today. So we're gonna cover 2 parts. The first part is things that can really spur your cravings related to exercise. So what forms of exercise can really aggravate and just make those cravings worse. And with that, I want to really emphasize some things that it's individualized. These are going to be kind of basic overview things. And of course, keep in mind for yourself, it might be very different or a variation of what I'm sharing with you. So these are kind of umbrella guidelines. And then of course, like I always say with nutrition tools as well, put it through the filter of you, find what works for you, and adapt what I'm saying to maybe you find it works really well, maybe there's some tweaks that you can make. So these are, again, kind of overview things. The first one is with exercise that can really spur cravings is with the longer duration steady state cardio. And that's been thankfully getting more awareness lately. There's been more in the literature that's been coming out and more in mainstream media talking about how, like if you want to lose fat, that maybe training for a marathon isn't the best way to go. A lot of people have come out like how they've gained weight when they've trained for triathlons or marathons. And again, it's not the case for everyone, but for, I would say, quite a few people, for the majority maybe even, that steady state cardio is a huge spur or incentive for your cravings, a trigger. And what that means, like what's steady state, what long duration? I would say anything over an hour for sure. Like if you're doing those longer training runs or bikes and swim sessions, those are gonna be over an hour. But for some people, even over 30 minutes can really kind of tip the scales over into having that uncontrollable cravings afterwards for something sweet in particular. It can really spark the appetite where you're gonna be actually oftentimes over consuming your calories that you're burning off during the session because you're just so hungry. I know for me, from my personal experience, when I trained for my one and probably only marathon, although I kind of want to do one again and do it a little smarter this time, but we'll see. Maybe when Oli's a little older, my son, I'll do it again. But when I trained for my marathon in Buenos Aires back in 2012, I was probably not going about it the smartest way because of the fact that I was doing so much just other cardio on top of the training runs. I was training at least 3 runs a week with those really long runs on the weekends, oftentimes for an hour and a half to up to 2.5 hours. And then during the week though, like my normal week was teaching boot camp classes 1 or 2 times a day, biking all over the city to teach yoga classes and to personal train clients. So I was biking for an hour a day probably, as well as doing part of those boot camp classes as I led them. They're draining. So I was doing all of that, plus sometimes my own like cross training workouts at home, more body weight Pilates style, on top of the runs that I would be doing. I would usually do sprints or intervals 1 day a week, maybe tempo run another day of the week, and then I would do my longer run for, again, an hour and a half to 2.5 hours on the weekend. So a lot of running, a lot of cardio, and that, when I was doing that, you guys, I was starving all the time. I was eating nonstop. I was craving carbs like a crazy person and sweets all the time. I was eating a ton. And I didn't really what happened to me mostly, I didn't really gain weight, but I definitely lost muscle. I lost a lot of muscle because I wasn't fueling properly and I was just doing too much. And it was just like my full-time job was eating to make up for all the exercise I was doing. So long duration steady state cardio for most people will really spur the cravings and the appetite. So it wasn't like I was craving a green smoothie or craving to eat a salad. I was craving spaghetti. That's probably the point in my life where I ate the most pasta ever. I was craving medialunas, which are pastries in Argentina. I was craving making cookies, making cakes, making sweets, I was trying to eat healthier things like these homemade truffles, which were better, but still carb central and a lot of sugar. So anyway, that's just an example of how long duration steady state cardio can really spur your appetite and your cravings for sweet things, and then kind of just throw your whole eating out of whack. It requires a lot of energy to eat well when you have those uncontrollable cravings. So that's the first one, is long duration steady state cardio. And again, I would say in general for most people that's going to be an hour or more. For other people it might be even just more than half an hour. If you're doing like a 30-minute run or more, that can be something that could trigger you to really have more cravings. Again, put it through the filter of you. Everyone's metabolism is unique. And then another one is overtraining. So kind of similar to this long duration cardio, but overtraining in particular is when you aren't incorporating rest days. So it's when you're maybe doing some long duration cardio, but maybe you're also doing like CrossFit, or you're doing weight training, circuit training, and you're doing 30 plus, maybe an hour of exercise or more a day, but really intense exercise, and you're not taking rest days. So it's where you're like going 6+ days a week, so maybe going every single day, like not taking off any days, where people kind of get obsessed with working out because they see some results maybe, and then they just keep going and going and going with it, and don't incorporate those rest days smartly, or in a thoughtful way. And so overtraining will really skyrocket our stress, which we had talked a bit about yesterday as a big trigger for cravings. So when stress is elevated, and exercise is a stress on the body that we need to account for, excuse me. So when stress is elevated in our body, and we're feeling this just run down feeling, it's going to elevate our cortisol levels. And when cortisol is elevated, we're less insulin sensitive, so we're less able to incorporate the food that we're eating, and we're actually go into more of a fat storage state rather than a fat burning state, which is what people think they're trying to get into. So they think that they're going to burn more fat and lose fat and weight and get leaner, but oftentimes the more you push on the system, on your metabolism, and you think you need to just do more and more and more, actually what might work better is to pull back on the amount of training you're doing, and I'll outline that and a kind of an idea what that would look like in a second. But to pull back, and to you might realize you're not craving as much for one, so it'll be easier to get your nutrition in line and eat healthfully to support fat loss, and you're just going to be able to recover and exercise more smartly, which we'll go over next, like how to exercise smartly to curb your cravings. So what I want to outline, kind of like what I kind of said was overtraining would be like an hour every single day, not taking rest days. What would look like ideal kind of training schedule for me, and again, you need to adjust for your level and your personal metabolism, would be 30 max of an hour a day. I would say 30 minutes is a really good, like kind of good spot to be in for the amount of time you spend on training. Unless maybe you're doing things like powerlifting, where it just naturally takes more time because there's a lot of rest in between sets. Powerlifting usually will take 45 minutes and even up to an hour. So I would say 30 up to 60 if you're doing that powerlifting kind of routine, and to take at least one full rest day a week, ideally 2 to 3. And that allows you, at least maybe you do 2 days of training and then have a rest day, or maybe at most I would say 3 days in a row of training and then a rest day. And on those rest days you can still be active, and I'll share on the next section kind of what are some good active rest day things to do that will augment your metabolism and help minimize your cravings. So like I said, 30 max of 60 minutes a day, and at least one rest day, preferably 2 to 3 a week. Sorry, I've got allergies and it's just blocking up my throat a little bit. And kind of like some things to look for, signs that you might be overtraining or just pushing too hard, is that you have low energy, which is the opposite, right? We want our exercise to keep us energized. You might feel more stressed out, just like anxious, more edgy. You might feel like your weight control is harder to maintain, like you feel like you're cutting calories and you're exercising a lot, but you're not able to, it's getting harder. Let me know if you guys have experienced any of these things too. Like, put in the comments if this is something you've gone through, or if you can relate to this. You have poor sleep, so maybe it's harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. That's a sign that you have maybe some signs of overtraining. You get really sore or fatigued feeling, like your muscle soreness just doesn't go away, and you don't enjoy it. So maybe it feels like an obsession where you feel like you have to do it, but you don't really look forward to your workouts anymore. Our exercise should be enjoyable, it should be energizing, and it should be like improving our lives, our health, and help making weight maintenance and weight loss easier, not harder. So those are just some signs. And there's something else I'm gonna highlight and I just forgot, of course. Okay, so we went over long duration cardio, we went over overtraining and what that looks like, and maybe some ways to adjust so that you prevent that. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. With overtraining, you might have some soreness, maybe some disturbance to your sleep or your appetite right when you start training. So let's say you haven't been working out and you start working out and you start to have some, it's just hard. The first maybe 3 weeks, it can be really tough when you're starting up a workout program. So I'm not talking about that. Like, I wouldn't be worried so much about overtraining. I mean, you need to be doing that initial ramp up smartly as well. But I'm talking more about like if you've been training for a few months and you are increasing the intensity, or you're training for something and you're adding miles and you're adding longer workouts, that's when I would pay attention to overtraining signs and pay attention then. Not right when you're starting out. You're probably not going to be overtraining then. The last one I want to talk about with spurring your cravings is with women in particular is working against their cycle, the hormone fluctuations within their cycle. We just had an amazing guest speaker in the Magic Makers movement yesterday, Stephanie Kleinberg, who is the expert on women's hormonal health. And she was going just over female hormones 101 and sharing really awesome insights into how we can work with our cycle and the fluctuations of estrogen and progesterone to augment fat loss and recovery, and to actually spur on our metabolism and make it work with us and be augmented. So with the first phase, from when you start your period to when you ovulate, that's when your estrogen is going to be going up. And then, oh shoot, now I'm going to second guess myself because I'm not the expert in this. But that is when you want to be, I'm not going to, just hold on for me now I'm going to second guess myself if that's when the progesterone goes up or the estrogen goes up. But for the first 2 weeks, what's recommended is actually 2 of your cycle, from when you start your period to when you ovulate. And then the second part of it is when you, from ovulation to when you have your period, so more that PMS time. So the first 2 weeks for women is a really good time to ramp up the intensity of your workouts a bit more. So maybe adding in an extra workout a week, or maybe working out for a little bit longer. Making a little bit tougher workouts for those first 2 weeks is a really nice time to do it. Then, and you're not going to have as much pushback from your metabolism and have overcompensation with your cravings and your appetite going out of control. So that's a really nice time to ramp up the intensity of your exercise, build a little muscle, so you're working on your muscle tone. And then the second half is a really good time when you're kind of starting to have that PMS kick in, and maybe your energy level is going to be going down anyway. That's a really good time to slow things down and do some of the things that we're going to go over next that can help curb your cravings. So really taking the time to slow down, get more rest days, and not push against yourself. Like, so if you're feeling run down and you know that you're kind of in that phase of your cycle, don't push against it, because that's going to be the worst. That's actually going to cause your thyroid to be like, whoa, what's going on? And like slow your metabolism down. So working with it by slowing down, honoring that time to maybe rest a bit more, and then you'll know that you can ramp it up again soon when you are in that next phase of your cycle. So just a little bit on that. So we went over overtraining, we went over long duration steady state cardio as a way that can really spur cravings, and then this last one of like not working with your cycle hormones. So trying to flow with it, not push against it, because when we push against it, our thyroid's going to push back and be like slow down the metabolism. So we don't want that. And when I say that, like slow down the metabolism, I also want to mention too, like the whole thing with what we're working on, like with the cravings, when we're pushing against it and we're fighting and we're feeling run down, and yet we're trying to get in that really intense workout that we had scheduled for ourselves, and we feel like the obligations that we need to do it, by pushing and doing, like following through and doing that when we really aren't maybe in the best place to do it, instead swapping out like walking or yoga, then I can guarantee you that it's going to result in higher cravings and to feel that your like appetite is out of control. That's when you're fighting against your body and what the hormones and those clues are telling you. That's like a tripwire for triggering your cravings. All right, so let's talk about some ways that we can curb your cravings with exercise. And because these are like magic, you guys. These can really help with just calming down the nervous system and helping to lower some of those hormones that can really trigger our cravings. So let's dive into those. And I always love to talk about the things that you can add in versus the things to not do. So let's talk about the things to do now. And that is the number one thing that I love to do as an exercise is slow walking. So leisure walking, where you can really move slowly and intentionally and take deep breaths, preferably in nature if you're able to. And that slow walking is really helpful for calming down your nervous system, lowering stress levels. So when we lower the cortisol levels, then we are going to have better insulin sensitivity. We're going to be absorbing the nutrients that we're eating better. We're not going to be raising our blood sugar and causing more cravings that way. So by slowly walking, I would recommend at least 30 minutes a day, or if you have a step counter, to aim for about 10,000 steps a day, or 30 to 60 minutes is awesome. But break it up. If you can just be active by getting out, doing a 10-minute walk here or there, or to go get groceries or to do your errands, awesome. The more you can incorporate slow walking, the better. An active lifestyle is so much more important than slapping on a Band-Aid of workouts a few times a week. Number 2 is rest days. So like we were talking about before with overtraining, when we don't have maybe one day a week, maybe none at all, the failure of rest days is huge, because when we don't have those rest days, we don't have that chance for our body to recover and have the magic happen where our bodies get able to kind of get those hormones back in balance and to do the work that we need to do to be ready to do intense exercise again. If we just keep doing intense exercise without those rest days, it's going to add more and more stress on the body. So the second thing to do to curb cravings is to actually take rest days. And on those rest days, you can still walk, you can still do yoga, you can do all those things that maybe take a bit more time that you aren't able to do on those workout days, because trust me, I get it. It's hard to do a workout, a warm up, a workout, a cool down, a stretching. All of that can take an hour or more, right? And it's hard to fit that all in. So maybe you have your intense workout day. Then on the other days when you're having your active rest day, you can really ramp up the other things that you weren't able to fit in. A nice long stretching session, you can do foam rolling, you can do yoga. So incorporating rest days is huge for helping to curb your cravings. If you're skipping those rest days, I can guarantee you that your cravings are going to be going through the roof. Number 3 is to do the calming exercises I've been mentioning. And those are yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, if you're familiar with that. Just general stretching. You don't have to do anything fancy, just stretching. You can do mobility work. If you have any physical therapy exercises you're working on, those can be really useful to do on your more active rest days and can be really calming for the nervous system. Foam rolling is like a self-massage. So doing those things are really helpful for the body to feel relaxed and to lower the stress hormones, which are triggers for our cravings. Number 3 is to, instead of doing those longer duration or overtraining long circuits or just doing too much intense exercise, is to swap out those for HIIT training or high intensity interval training, or circuit style like metabolic conditioning workouts, which are 30 minutes or less. And those are really intense and can actually suppress our appetite and cravings, which is awesome because of the intensity of them. So you want them to be intense, but short. I'm talking 10 minutes to 30 minutes max. I usually have my HIITs be about 15 to 20 minutes max. If I'm doing Tabata style, which is where you do 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest for 8 rounds, and you maybe do that for 3 or 4 different exercises. Each block takes about 4 minutes. So I usually do about 4 to 5 different exercises. So say I do burpees with those 20 seconds of work and 10 seconds rest for 8 rounds. Maybe another time I do jump lunges, or I do something with weights like squat to overhead press, and I do that for those 8 rounds. And you do that for about 20 minutes total. I would say no more than that. So you really want to swap out kind of that longer steady state sort of pacing type of workout for this high intensity interval training or metabolic conditioning, where you're kind of like in this tornado. It goes really fast. It's like exactly what I did this morning. For my workout, I did 20 minutes and I did 5 different exercises for 1 minute each for 4 rounds. So the timer kept going, and if I needed to take rest, I just took a little bit of rest, and then I would jump right back into it and just do what I could for that minute. And the exercises were squat to overhead press with weights, plank rows, Bulgarian split squats with a chain. So I would do 1 full one, 1 pulse, and then 2 full ones, and then 2 pulses up to 5, and then go back to 1, switching legs each round. The 4th one was core work, so I was doing dead bugs and bicycle twists. And then the 5th minute were sprints. So elevated incline sprints on the treadmill. I just jumped on, did a sprint for as much of that minute as I could, and then jumped off and kept going with that circuit. So swapping out the longer duration for that short circuit style with weights and intense, like it's just like you're breathless, you're burning, you're like can't hardly talk, and the weights should be heavy if you're using weights, or the exercises should be challenging if you're doing them. Safe but challenging. And then another thing that can really help curb cravings with your exercise is to do like regular consistent exercise. So staying consistent with your routine, like having those rest days, but still like having a routine. They found that when people work out consistently in the morning, so say you work out every morning, so you have 5 days every morning, Monday through Friday, people get up and do a 20-30 minute workout. They have suppressed cravings throughout the day. Their appetite is less throughout the day. It's not amazing, that's awesome, but they're consistent with it. And that creates this kind of positive cycle, feed cycle. So if you're doing a positive action for your health, oftentimes that feeds into you feeling better about yourself, and you actually want to keep that feeling going, and you take better care of yourself, and you actually make better food choices too. I find that's totally true for myself and with clients. Like when they're on track with their exercise, they're almost always eating better. When they fall off track with their exercises, it's like a ticket to overindulge or something. Like it's just like, I messed up a little bit, or I'm a little bit off track, so I might as well just go like throw caution to the wind and just doesn't matter. I'll eat whatever I want. So consistent exercise, again, being smart about it, but consistent is really helpful to curb those cravings by really getting in that exercise daily. And that's just like a mindset thing more than anything. It's like, I'm on board with this. I'm taking care of myself and doing things to improve my health. And oftentimes that feeds into checking yourself a bit before you indulge in those cravings. Like you might have them, but you check yourself because you're like, no, I want to take care of myself. One thing I didn't mention with the calming exercises, the slow walking, and your rest days is to really focus on breathing exercises. It's not really an exercise in terms of movement, but it's really important to have those really deep calming breaths. If you want to even, you could do like a 1 to 3 minute breathing exercise where you just close your eyes and sit comfortably and take really long inhales, not to the point where you're straining, and really long exhales. So maybe count of 4 in and 4 out, and just do that with your eyes closed for 1 minute, even if you're really crunched for time, or up to 5 minutes. And I find that that's super calming, super settling, and helps you reconnect with yourself. And we're gonna go a bit more into this in the last day, where we're gonna go into my apt response for really breaking patterns with uncontrollable cravings. But even in the moment of having a craving, I will sometimes set my timer for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just a chunk of time to like, just know that I can check back in on that craving. I'm kind of like passing it off to someone else in a way, like not anyone physically, but just like, I'm just kind of like putting it on the shelf for a bit. I set the timer, I take a big glass of water and drink it, and I oftentimes will just do something else, or we'll do a breathing exercise that helps me really connect to myself again, and to kind of tune into what I really need, and to calm down the nervous system. I mean, that does 2 things really, the breathing exercises. That calming deep breath can really help with lowering stress, which is a trigger for cravings, as well as, like I said, just tuning into yourself, checking in. What is that craving really maybe telling you? What's that persistent kind of thing that it's saying to you? Is it really that it needs food, that your body needs food, or that your soul needs food, or is it something else? And so it gives you that chance to really check in. And we're gonna go over that sort of tool a lot more on Friday in my in the apt response section. That kind of is like that take-home tool that I really want you to have to use in those situations where you really are confronted with those uncontrollable cravings. For me, those often pop up if I'm gonna have them at night, when I'm maybe feeling tired, stress from the day has accumulated, all sorts of things, And so having a tool to turn to that helps break those patterns is so important. All right, you guys, let me see if there's any questions. Let me just 1 second. Overtraining, long duration cardio, no danger for me there. I can't imagine getting obsessed with working out, either one, but yeah. So yeah, exactly. It's different for everyone. Overtraining might not be the thing for you, but steady state cardio, you know, maybe for you or for someone else could be tipping the scales at around 30 minutes. For some people that might not be a trigger, but just paying attention to anytime you're kind of doing a paced sort of cardio activity, that's what I mean by paced is where you're just kind of in a rhythm. And don't get me wrong, those kind of activities have a huge mental benefits. They're very good for if you suffer from depression or wants just more mental clarity. They give you that endorphin hit from like runner's high. So I'm not saying that steady state cardio is bad. Actually, like my husband does it. he runs, and I encourage him to do that, even though he could probably work out a little smarter, but he's so busy and stressed from work that for him, it's like a way of calming down and like clearing his mind and just helps him feel more positive. So for me, I am going to encourage him to continue that. For one, he enjoys it, so that's the most important thing. But for two, like, it doesn't really seem to affect his cravings too much because he does it for like half an hour or less. And it has such a mental benefit for him of just relieving stress. Another comment about the cycle. Yeah, and breathing exercises are really helpful. We're gonna go into that tool I'm gonna share on Friday with the apt response. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that for the last day. And for now, I just wanna leave you with, just to remind you, like, these are just suggestions for you, like tools that I found through my work over the last 15 years as a dietitian, and then in the last 6 as a personal trainer and yoga teacher, and also that are backed by the science, that are backed by literature. That being said, the literature doesn't always study your unique case and scenario, your unique genetics and metabolism. So always put it through the filter of you. Find out what works for you. Like I said, for some people, their goal with exercise is that mental clarity. Maybe they're suffering from depression, or they need just an outlet for that. Or maybe they're really focused on fat loss, and that is probably the tools I'm talking about, of like preventing overtraining and not overstimulating cravings. Those are going to be more applicable to you. But always put it through your own filter of what your goals are, and just pay attention, do the work, be a detective, and try things. Start there, and then adjust as you need to really find a solution that works well for you. I'll be sending out a replay of this recording to the ladies on the list for the Control Your Cravings course. Excuse me, those allergies. And as well as important information for those of you that are on the list, you're gonna get a special discounted and members only access to the Rev and Reset program that I offer. And that is something that I've only been offering in the Magic Makers Movement, a group coaching club. But now I'm opening up to those that are doing the Control Your Cravings course, and you're gonna get discounted access to that, as well as access to the club. So you get to actually experience the Magic Makers Movement, where we'll all be doing the Rev and Reset program, this 2-week metabolic jumpstart. That's a nutritional reset, as well as, if you're wanting it, intense workouts to really kind of ramp up the intensity in a smart way. So, right? We're gonna do shorter, intense workouts, not this longer duration. And we're also gonna incorporate important rest days and recovery with yoga. So if you're interested in that, sorry, had a call come in, so make sure you're on the list if you want discounted entry into that, and access to the one-on-one coaching with me and the group support while we're doing the Rev and Reset for 2 weeks. Okay, you guys, have a great night or great day and wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you again tomorrow, 12 Central Time. And we're gonna be covering sleep and stress and how those can really impact. We're gonna dive more specifically into those and how they impact our cravings, and how we can kind of tweak some things to minimize those cravings. Have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon. Bye.